I think as parents, we assume that kids are going to just know the right way to do things. You have to teach them first and then train them by teaching them to do it over and over again until they actually get it.
Imagine trying to teach your child how to tie his shoes without the practice principle. If the practice principle is vital for teaching such morally neutral task as tying shoes, how much more important is it for training children in Christ-like character?
I speak to parents all the time who come up to me and they see what's happening, but they don't know what to do. And I just want to stand up and say, you can do this. Here is a solution.
This is Yvette Hampton, host of the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. Join us each week for a new episode as we offer encouragement and resources on biblical discipleship from popular speakers and authors, as well as parents just like you and me. Find out more at schoolhouserocked.com or listen anywhere you find your favorite podcast.
Hey, everybody. We are so glad that you are here. We have this awesome panel time, and Yvette has been going since yesterday morning, all day yesterday, all day today. So I'm going to give her a break. My name is Aby Rinella, and I will be doing the panels for the next few days just to give her a little bit of a break. And I am so excited. We're going to go around and just share a little bit about who you have here for the next hour and a half. But before we do, I want to do some bookkeeping here. So if you have a question, please, it helps us if you write question before you see it, so we can see if there's a question or a comment. And if it's for a specific person, please put their name. Like you can put question for Davis and then read that. It just helps us filter through those. So my name, like I said, is Aby Rinella, and I am the co-host of the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I'm also a board member for Homeschool Idaho, and a writer and a speaker, and above all, a Jesus follower, a wife, and a mama. So we're going to go around and we'll go to Kim and then Davis and then Caleb, and you guys can share a little bit about yourself, your families, and then we'll hop into questions.
Okay, I'm Kim Sorgius, and I write and help families grow in faith at notconsumed.com. I have 4 children who I have homeschooled since the beginning, ranging now in age from 10 to 15, and I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Kim. Davis?
Sure. Davis Carman here. My wife is Rachel. We've been married 33 years, coming up on 34. We got 7 kids, ranging in age from 29 down to 16. I always like to say we have 2 boys on the front end, 2 boys on the back end, and 3 girls tucked safely in the middle. We started our homeschooling journey with a 2x4 over the head. Very reluctant at the beginning, wasn't our plan, but God got a hold of us. And here, 24 years later, we have 5 who have graduated from our homeschool. This May, we'll have our 4th college graduate. And we only have 2 boys at home right now, a big 16 and almost 18-year-old that we're working to graduate and finish well. But Rachel and I own and lead Apologia Educational Ministries. They are one of the leaders in creation-based science and Bible curricula. And we just came out with math. We actually launched it yesterday, so we're real excited about that. But that's where we got what I like to call skin in the game of the homeschooling movement. And our goal and mission is to help homeschooling families learn, live, and defend the faith. And we do that primarily through Apologia.
That is awesome. And if anybody did the session with Todd Wilson, if you watched it, if you didn't, go back and watch it. We already got an intro to Davis Carman. Todd spoke of Davis several times if you missed it. All right, Caleb.
So I am a homeschool graduate. I am one of 9 children. We were all homeschooled. And I've been a public school teacher for the last 18 years. So I sort of have just an interesting perspective on homeschooling. I have 6 children. My wife and I have been married for 18 years. And my 2 boys are not tucked safely at all. They're right in the middle of all 4 of my girls. So I have 2 girls, 2 boys, and then 2 more girls. My kids range from 15 years old to 5 years old. I'm actually in the middle of a career change right now. I've been teaching mathematics at the high school and the junior college level for 18 years, and I'm just moving into full-time ministry. So I'm going to be working as a pastor starting next week. I'll actually start my job. Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're excited. Like I said, just following up on Todd's session, we had a lot of questions for dads. He spoke a lot to dads. So we're really blessed and excited to have Davis and Caleb here to balance Kim and I out. So again, if people would write in any questions you have for these speakers, we have a lot of wisdom here, a lot of years. I couldn't do the math quick enough to see how many years we have between us, but it's a lot. We had some questions coming in before, so I'm just going to dive into those and then we'll get to some of the others. This has been one of my very favorite questions that have come in so far, and I'm gonna hand it off to Caleb. And I just love the wording. It says homeschool boys, ! So different than homeschool girls. Help. And I thought that was great. So obviously we have a mom that and I have that. I had a daughter and I thought I had it all figured out, and then I had a boy, and it's a whole different game. So what advice do you have to offer, Caleb, for those that are maybe used to homeschooling girls and then that God created boy came along?
Yeah, it is a whole different world. I think the key is to not try to turn your little boy into a little girl. He's going to be squirrely. He's going to be moving around, and that's fine. It's really nice for us as educators to have our children sitting neatly and working on the schoolwork, and the boys oftentimes they don't like that. So one of the things I like to do, if you've ever heard of a Pomodoro method, you take 20 minutes of focus time. And so my wife will sit down with the kids at the kitchen table and she'll say, okay, you just need to give me 20 minutes of focus time, where you're going to do one subject, you're going to focus on it for 20 minutes, and then you're going to get up and you're going to run outside and you're going to play basketball or roller skate or jump on the trampoline for a couple minutes, and then come back in and refocus and give me 20 minutes. So we just sort of try to get them to study in chunks instead of, okay, you have to finish the curriculum. The timer tells them when they're done. And we're not so much concerned about them completing this many problems. We're concerned about them giving us 20 minutes of focus time.
That's a great idea. That's great advice. Davis, with 4 boys, what was the trick?
Yeah, so I'll reiterate one of Caleb's suggestions, and that is outside. Send them outside. We have a wraparound porch, and many times when it was apparent to Rachel that things were starting to get out of control, she would just say, boys, outside, take 3 laps. And they'd run around the house and come back and, probably laughing more than anything. But the outside is a good word. The second word I would say is Legos. When our boys in particular were younger, we found that if they were playing with Legos while mom was reading to them, that's when they were able to concentrate on what she was saying. But if you force a little boy to sit still, and even some little girls, it's not going to happen. It's going to take more energy to focus on sitting still than it is to walk around the sofa while mom's reading, to be fidgeting, to go take that lap after a short 20 minutes, or to be playing with Legos. So we got a house full of Legos now.
I think everybody needs a house full of Legos. Kim, you shared how many kids you had, but did you say the orders and genders?
I didn't. I have 2 girls at the top and 2 boys at the bottom.
Okay, so you had 2 girls to start, and then you got the boys thrown in. So how did you handle that?
I definitely do exactly what has already been suggested. That's the strategy with boys. They do need to be outside. They need to be moving. I would add that I don't require them to sit in a chair. So it's okay if they're, doing math and they're dancing around and not necessarily sitting down, even during focus time. I do have one child who probably would be ADHD if he had gone to school and been diagnosed. And so he especially needs that. Like, he really needs to just be able to, and he does. He dances around and he kicks, and it's fine. He's still learning. So don't box yourself in would be my additional advice.
I love that. So Legos, move, and one of the people over here said food. If we can just feed the boys all day long, right? All right, Davis, I'm gonna give this one to you. This says, help. How do I motivate my kids to do school? So motivation.
Oh, yeah. You can either go the scare tactic or the inspiration tactic. So yeah, I try to avoid the threats. One of the things Rachel and I really worked hard to try and do was to instill a love for learning. And so, a theme that's already beginning early in this panel discussion is that when you homeschool, you can help instill a love of learning, and you can mix it up with short durations of time to help get that little bit of focus that they can manage. You can send them outside. You can take breaks. You can let them fidget and stand while they're doing their work. You can let them even hold a pet. I think pets should be in all homeschools because it's amazing how that helps my kids that have a harder time focusing to focus. So on the motivation side of things, that's where literally that's one of the hardest things, because each kid's going to be motivated differently. And sometimes with some of my kids, it was a conversation, and usually it was a spiritual kind of conversation. Like, what does God, put on your heart that is interesting? And, then they probably never thought of that question. So they start thinking, okay, what I think I should love God. And mom and dad have asked me a question that sounds pretty important. I don't know. Let me think about that. And so then you begin a conversation with them that actually helps them start thinking about what is the purpose of work, the purpose of life, the purpose of being a child of God. And it becomes more than just what will I do for a living, as they get older. But as a little kid, when they may be asking, why are we doing any of this? It can begin connecting them to, as a child of God, God's created you for certain things, and he's gifted you in certain ways. And so as a homeschooler, you can give them a disproportionate amount of work in the areas they're interested in. Two examples I love to give is my second son, who's 24 years old and married, is a freelance artist. And he's not a starving artist. He's doing really well. But when he was young, all he wanted to do was draw. And okay, but we got math and science and Bible and other things to do. But he was so good at it, we were able to give a disproportionate amount of time to that. And our youngest, who's 16, is the same way. He's a budding artist with a great talent. And so we build that into the curriculum. The other example I like to give there is my daughter, who had a heart. When I was asking her these questions, she was very spiritually mature beyond her years. And when she was 8 years old, she said, Dad, I really feel like God is calling me to something in mission work in China. So when she was 8, because we homeschool, we could give her Chinese language and culture lessons. She did that for 10 years. She's been to China 3 times, and she's not doing that now. She's in some graduate work in Texas, but she still has a heart for missions, for China. And that was a part of her journey, but it was very motivational for her to get to work on that. Just like my sons, it's very motivational for them to get to spend time doing work that's art related.
Okay, so you're saying find what motivates them, and then they will be motivated. Right,
and it's usually something that they're gifted at, or that they begin to discover that they're gifted at, and then they'll want to spend time there. And so you, as a parent, help hone it towards something useful or God honoring, so that it's not I want to play with Legos all day. That's not the worst thing in the world, but how can we now turn that into something that'll build later? Are you interested in building buildings, and maybe architecture is what you as a parent would think down the road? Or are they making cars all the time? Maybe they're going to be very mechanically inclined. But you begin to ask those questions when they're young, and start building to see, why are they interested in bugs? Maybe that'll actually turn into an entomology study and degree, or maybe that was just a passing phase right now, which is not a waste of time at all. We've studied many subjects in depth that we thought our kid was going to really pursue, to find out that lasted a year or two, and then they found a different interest as we're doing the basic things that are important.
Wow, I love that. So just motivate their heart, find out what that's the freedom, the privilege of the freedom of homeschool. We get to do that, and that's a huge privilege. So so to follow up with that, when they're littler, I think that a lot of parents find, because we have all day to homeschool, it's not like the bell rings at 2:30. So I know with my kids, and in talking to other parents, it's, well, I'll just get to, there's no reason to rush through this. The bell's not going to ring. So more tangibly, how, Caleb, I'm going to throw this one out to you. How can we motivate And then Kim, chime in with this too. How can we motivate kids to not drag this on all day long?
Well, doing the method where we break it up into chunks can help them. I think that I'm in public education. And so in public education, I always have to laugh when they do these professional development times where they're telling us how we need to differentiate the instruction and we need to mix it up, right? Because I have 30 to 40 students in front of me. I can't differentiate. But in homeschool, we can. And I think that sometimes we let how education works in the world around us dictate how we're doing it in our own home. And it always saddens me when I see homeschool parents who are trying to copy public education. The whole point is that we can do it better. And so let's do it better. So if something's not working, sometimes we need to start and try again. Sometimes we need to shift our focus, and we really need to know our students. And that's another beauty of homeschooling. You know your own children, you know their strengths, you know, maybe they would learn this concept better through movement. I love to teach the number line through movement, have them move around the number line. Students really can understand the relationships between integers by moving around. But in a classroom, I can't do that. Some songs are always a great way to get the information to stick in their head. Changing where they're working, instead of just having them stay there and focus and just try to do the same thing over and over again. That's the definition of insanity. If that's not working, start over, try something different, mix it up.
Yeah, I love that. And Kim, your whole focus is not being consumed. And I think sometimes as homeschool parents, we get consumed with, we have to get X, Y, and Z done before 3 o'clock. How do I motivate this to happen? So in your homeschool, how does that look?
Well, first of all, you don't have to get X, Y, and Z done by 3 o'clock. So, some of that starts with backing up and deciding, well, what is my vision? What do we want to do? And, is this thing, as Caleb was saying, really important? Or is this thing something that I'm just thinking I need to do because that's what all the other schools or all the other homeschoolers even are doing? And just making sure that that the things you're doing really are the things that fit with your family's vision and where you want to go. I also really like a checklist. I find checklists, most kids are really motivated by checklists. It doesn't work for everybody, but kids really like checklists. And so when they see, I'm like halfway done and I only have like a couple more things that I want to try to get done today, that can be really motivating to a lot of kids.
I love that. I don't know if I'm the only parent, but I see what motivates my kids is each other. So mostly with math, because other things we do together and it's not like but math is pretty much you start at step A and you go, and I hear them yelling across the house, what number are you on? I'm on number 5. I'm on number, and I just watch them motivate each other in that way. It cracks me up.
I actually have a child right now who's been setting his alarm and getting up at 6 so he can beat his brother to the computer so he can say that math is done before his brother.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, and you're like, yep, there you go. My job is done. That's wonderful. That's great. So a question just popped in and it said, what is one thing you'd tell parents entertaining homeschooling, high schooling for the first time? We've homeschooled since day one. So this is a family that has always homeschooled, but I'm not there yet. I don't have a high schooler, but I know those are daunting. I think that's a common question with homeschool families is those high school years.
Oh,
so
yeah. Let me chime in there. I remember. Yeah. So even though Rachel and I got started very reluctantly in this homeschooling journey with that providential 2x4 over the head, and the first year was crazy rocky, just not a good year. Second and third year, we're getting a little better. By that fourth year, we were fully committed to this, even with high school way off in the distance, not knowing what it would look like. Well, then we're starting to get into the rhythm, get into the groove. We're feeling like we got this figured out. We're doing pretty good. Good years, bad years, but mostly good. And then we're nearing the end of 8th grade for our oldest. And I realized, oh my goodness, same question. We got high school. We got to think about transcripts and I don't even know what else I need to think about. I actually have to start going back to support group meetings. And so I remember going to my very first support group meeting after about a 6 or 7 year hiatus and, going to the one about how to prepare for high school transcripts and such. And I still remember that meeting because it was so helpful. One of the biggest takeaways was the plan. So one of the best things you can do before you start ninth grade is to just look at a 4-year plan. And some of that can be, okay, are we going to go the college route or the non-college route? That will answer a lot of questions in terms of what you want to try and get done in those 4 years. But then even though man can man can plan their ways, God directs your steps, meaning there can be some adjustment along the way. So don't get totally stuck on your plan. But for instance, with all our kids, we decided, okay, we're going to have 3 or 4 years of foreign language because that would be required for college. We're going to do 3 or 4 years of math if they were technologically oriented. How many years of science are we going to need and which courses? What writing courses and where do we think we might take those courses? Online, this curriculum, a tutor, or something else. That was the biggest help of anything, was just putting together a 4-year plan, kind of seeing the big picture and the overview. And that also helped with creating the transcript later because we weren't doing it 1 year at a time. We were kind of looking at it as a 4-year block. Okay. And every year I got better. I feel like I really got a handle on this now with the 2 younger ones. I feel like they're going to have the best looking transcripts and the most organized, mainly because we were better planned at the beginning than that first year. But planning the 4 years ahead of time is one of the best pieces of advice I can give to parents entering high school.
So if you aren't sure if your child's going to go the college route or not, how would you plan for that?
I'm sorry. I had my earphone muted. I didn't hear what you said.
Sorry. So if you aren't exactly sure what is going to happen down the road, how would you plan those 4 years if you're not sure if we're doing college or not? Just give a good general.
Well,
so that any way can go.
Yeah, I would say the biggest wild card is the foreign language. So a foreign language would be required for college, not necessarily if they're not going the college route. Other than that, you could do 3 or 4 years of math, 3 or 4 years of science, and it's not as critical with the other subjects. But foreign language is going to be the most critical one.
Okay.
So let me chime in real quick too. So I was homeschooled all the way through high school, and my parents didn't create a transcript for me. That's something you sort of have to figure out how you want to do it. I don't know if all homeschool parents know this, but if you go a junior college route, you end up at a 4-year school, you get the same degree anybody else gets, but they're not going to be concerned about your high school diploma. They're not going to be concerned about your transcript. Most JCs, you just go and you take a placement test, and then they put you in your classes and you start working. So I don't really have to worry about those things. However, with my children, my oldest is 15 now. She's a sophomore. We have been creating a transcript for her. She's in classical conversation, so we can do that through classical conversation. So that's an option that we have. I also believe in doing dual enrollment when you're in high school. A lot of the classes the students are taking in high school, they could take the same class at a JC and start to get the college credit while they're in high school. You want to pay attention to what you're doing, to what your child's ready for. It totally varies on the child. If you've really been equipping them with a solid Christian worldview, they'll be able to go in and take 1 or 2 JC classes here and there, and then come home to you and debrief and talk about what they're learning. If they're a little shaky on their worldview, you probably don't want them going to a JC till they're over 18. So those are questions you really need to figure out for your individual student. But taking some of those community college classes can help get some of those credits out of the way. And once they've got their 2 years in, they can transfer to any 4-year university. If you want to graduate high school, purely homeschooled, and then go away to a 4-year, you really need to look at a program that's going to give you an accredited transcript. Most universities are going to require that. There's some private Christian schools that won't require that. Private Christian schools, especially the liberal arts ones, are working more and more with us now. But if you're wanting, if your child is looking at a 4-year university, it'd be really good to get an accredited transcript. You can do that. I know you can do it through Classical Conversations. I would assume there's other Christian organizations out there that you can do that through. So that's something you can look into doing.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. I love that we, again, can personalize the education for each of our kids, that we can get to know our kids, see how God made them, what direction they're going, and then personalize that. So, Kim, we just did high school. I'm going to bounce way back to the earlier years, and I'm going to give this one to you. This person writes in, Tiffany writes in, we are early in homeschooling, ages 4 and 1, and I love getting inspired, but I get overwhelmed. How do I stay inspired and informed, but not discouraged by too much? We have all been there.
I think you answered your question in the question, and that's don't do too much. I think the tendency with younger kids especially is just to jump in and, I need a stack of 900 books for my kindergartner, and that's just too much. So take a step back and do the things that you love. Spend a lot of time with your children on your lap, reading and experiencing things. And I would even also add like life experiences, like field trips and stuff, because I just feel like the older your kids get and the more kids you get, and just as that happens, it just doesn't happen as much as it did when they were, little and there were just a couple. So the more you can take advantage of that too, it's just excellent experience for your kids.
I love that. And on Thursday, Danielle Papagiorgio is going to come on and talk about life schooling, which is really in those younger years. That's what we're doing. And it doesn't really change. So yeah, don't get overwhelmed, because if you're in it for the long haul, if you're over informing and you're doing your lesson plans at age 1, it's going to lead to burnout. So don't do too much. Like you said, she answered her question in her question.
One thing I'd like to add to that is I remember when we were having babies, adding the 4th, adding the 5th, 6th, and 7th, it's next to impossible to try and do serious full-time school with a little one that's just been born. And there's bonding with that new family member that can take place. And some of my favorite times when we had a newborn was to take 2 or 3 months and quote unquote not do school, and instead we did family. And there's plenty of responsibilities to happen there. And like Kim was saying, when you're doing those life experiences, you're doing school and you're doing it to the max, really. Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to go to Caleb. I'm going to have you answer this one because this just fits for you. It says, how can we involve dad in our school when he's gone all day? And I know that a lot of moms feel that way. Dad's gone all day, but we still want him involved. So how can we as moms do that?
So because I'm a homeschool graduate, I love homeschooling. So I like to go to the homeschool conference. I'm listening to the podcasts. And so I'm gonna steal a few things from other people. I don't know if you guys know Fletch and Kendra, but I love their homeschool in real life. And one of the things that they did is when dad's home, dad's on deck. And what that means is the captain is on deck and all questions go to dad. Oftentimes mom at the end of the day just has decision fatigue. She's exhausted. She's been answering questions all day. And so when dad comes home, just giving that break. Another shameless plug. I love Read Aloud Revival because we're a read aloud family. We love after dinner to sit around and just read aloud to each other. And that's one of my passions. I love reading out loud to my children. And one of the things I find is that children who are read to are most successful. One of the studies actually showed a direct correlation between students who had parents who read aloud to them and higher SAT scores. And what was interesting is it was a more direct correlation than even parents' level of education. So if a parent usually has a higher level of education, students do better on the SAT scores. There's a little bit of a correlation there, but there was more of a correlation between parents who read aloud, no matter what their level of education was. If they were reading aloud to their children, that made the biggest difference for their kids' future success, taking SATs, ACTs, college prep.
Wow, that's a great way to get dad involved when he's not around.
Well, and read alouds are something you can continue well after the kids are young. I mean, we have a 16 and 18-year-old at home, and we still do read alouds. We did David Copperfield last summer, took our time reading through that nice long, Charles Dickens book. We've done Moby Dick, read aloud. And then of course we did the fun ones that all homeschoolers have done, that we, reminisce about, Johnny Tremaine, the Golden Goblet, Dolphin Island, and, all those that are part of some of the curriculum groups that we put together. So read alouds are a great way for dad to be involved.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I also think that's a great way for grandparents to be involved too. And later in the week, we're going to have the Heckies chime in on with grandparenting and share that with us. But I think that is a great anybody can read aloud. We can all read aloud together. So thank you for that. Kim, this one's for you. This person says, what do I do when my kids buck me when it comes to school? And everybody's waiting on pins and needles for this one.
Put them in the closet. No,
I
don't know why you pegged me for this question, but you know what my first response usually is just to back off and evaluate. I feel like you have to step back and you have to say, okay, what's going on? Like, why is this child bucking the system? If the child is generally disobedient and bucking everything, okay, so it's really not school. It's just we need to work on this hard issue, right? And then you go work on that hard issue. If the child doesn't generally act like that, and this seems like an out of character sort of thing, there probably is something. Sometimes it's a subject. I find it's often a subject. It's some subject that just is, the thorn in their side, and they're not even recognizing it. And sometimes we as parents have to step in and say, wait a minute, it looks like this is, causing an issue or whatever. And this actually happened with my middle daughter once with reading. And things were fine. I thought they were fine. And then suddenly, school was a meltdown every day. And I thought, why? What's going on? Everything was fine. And I realized that, there was an issue with the actual reading curriculum and the way it was just putting her up against a wall. I pulled that curriculum out and started doing something different. And guess what? Everything fixed. And it was just this little thing. So stepping out of the moment and really evaluating what's going on and not reacting right away, I think is really important when it comes to something like that. So you can say, see what's causing the issue and deal with just that issue. And, yeah.
I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice for almost everything. And sometimes we need to step back and look at it. And earlier today, there was a session on Mary and Martha and the way they homeschool differently. So if you didn't see that, go back. But I think sometimes the Marthas want to buck back. You're going to buck me. I'm going to buck you back. And that never works. So I love that advice of just stepping back and really analyzing where is this coming from? Davis, you have several children that I feel like probably somewhere in there, you guys have been bucked. How do you handle those situations?
Oh, yeah. Rachel's tearjerker session yesterday was about, what about that child?
Right.
The child that just makes you pull your hair out, that, is beyond strong-willed, and you just there is no book on, how to deal with this. So we had a male version and a female version. And the good news is we had a couple of really compliant kids. You just had to look at them the wrong way and they're back on track. Here's the weird part. So I'm a compliant person. Rachel was a very strong-willed child. And so when we had our first strong-willed child, I didn't understand it at all. Why can't you just obey? Just do what Mom and Dad said. That's the right thing to do. I couldn't understand it, but Rachel understood it completely. She said, "Oh, this is a control issue for him." And I'm thinking, control issue? I don't get that. So because she understood it better, she was typically the one that would address our two kids that were strong-willed, because she could be the mean mom, and she would admit she won the mean mom award several times. I had a harder time being the bad dad award. That just wasn't in my personality, mix. If one of the parents is more understanding and can relate to the kind of tough love that child needs, that they can really go to the mat with them, I'd assign that parent the job. And trust me, I still had my time trying to work it, but it was when I was working with those two children, it was usually a headbutting competition because I didn't really understand how their mind was working. They didn't really understand the way I was thinking. But it is a hard issue. I mean, as Kim said, whether it's the compliant kid or the strong-willed, there can be those hard issues. I will say this one example, real life example, with one of my strong-willed kids, we had to enforce a punishment that was no fun for everybody. So I was going to take my two older sons to this soccer game. We were all looking forward to it. They were looking forward to it. It was a professional match here in our town. And I can't even remember what my son did, but one of the sons was completely disobedient, took us to the mat, completely bucked the system. And we're having dinner and it's getting out of control. And Rachel and I both realized there's no way I can take him to this soccer game. And so we have our private little session and we come out and talk to the boys. And we all did one of the hardest things we ever did as a parent is I took my other son alone to the soccer game and left the disobedient one at home. And, Rachel had to, wrestle him that night. But it's one of those memories that even for my son was very instrumental in shaping his heart because we did it with love, and he interpreted it as love, which was key. But it stuck with him for a long, long time. And so a lot of times those heart-shaping events don't solve something right then and there, but they can be longer lasting in that continual training that we have to do as parents.
That's really good. That's really good. So I'm just reading through some of these questions and Caleb struck a chord. The read aloud is going crazy over here. Everybody wants to know. And I couldn't agree more. There is something about reading aloud as a family and having that shared experience and being able to, and then you hear kids tell the stories with each other and it's a way they connect. So I'm going to can we go back a little bit and answer some of these reading questions because they seem pressing on people. And I'm going to read it and then I'm going to let you guys take turns if you feel like you can answer this. So this one's probably going to be a pretty quick answer. It says, I keep hearing about reading aloud to my children. I love to do it, but after a while I get tired. Is it better to keep reading aloud several short times a day or let me just rephrase that. After a while I get tired. Is it better to read aloud several short times a day to keep motivated or keep reading when I get tired because it's so important?
Yeah. So actually, if you read some of my wife's comments, she's gotten out in front of that one. But yeah, she says we do about 10 minutes during the day for read aloud. In the evenings, we usually read longer, but everybody's sort of relaxed. We've just had dinner. We're all sitting around the couches. We shoot for the average age of our kids. So like right now we're reading the Dark Side of the Dark Sea of Darkness, if you're familiar with that book. And my kids are 5 to 15. So that's shooting for about 10 years old. Okay. That book's geared towards a 10-year-old. So we average their ages out. So my 5-year-old, she's lost. She's not really following that. And so she'll be over at the coffee table coloring. She'll be doing something. She's not really tuning in everything. Even we read our Bible after we have dinner every night. And I'll ask all of the kids questions on what I've just read. And I try to ask her really level 1 questions, or my 5-year-old, and she really has trouble with that. But we keep on reading and they're just pulled along. As they grow, more of it is going to make sense to them. I think that for daytime reading, I know that for my wife, there are times where she's reading aloud to the kids during the day and she's dragging, especially in the afternoon, you're tired. So the kids actually know when mom starting to drift off as she's reading, they'll go make her a cup of tea and bring her a cup of tea because they want to hear the story and mom's too tired. So a little caffeine helps too.
That's wonderful. I think audiobooks as well. Audiobooks, you have the same shared experience. You can totally have the same experience with audiobooks. I remember I heard, Davis, is it true that I heard Rachel say that she would read for 3 hours at a time? She's superwoman on all levels.
Rachel is amazing. I was the classic dad that my kids would start, talking about, dad's about to fall asleep in the middle of a sentence. It was hard, but I typically did my reading, before bedtime. And yeah, you can only go so long. So we typically go 30 to 35 minutes. Once you started pushing 45 minutes, dad was going to be falling asleep in the middle of a sentence. It just wasn't going to work. But the one of the cool things that I love doing during read aloud time was to, keep it shorter, like Caleb was saying, and finish only reading 1 or 2 chapters instead of 3 or 4, because then the kids are wanting more. Dad, can we read another chapter? No, I got y'all in a good place. Let's stop right here and start brushing our teeth and get ready for bed. And those were some of my favorite memories because, I stayed awake, they were engaged, and everybody's anxious for tomorrow to happen.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Not big chunks so much. Good. Kim, do you have anything to chime in for the read alouds?
So I'm going to go against the grain with this one. I am a single mom, and I have been a single mom since my oldest child was 6. And so we started read alouds really in some of the early turmoil, times in my life. And I never read to my kids at night. Never read to my kids at night. And one of the reasons for that is at the beginning, I was nursing an infant and I was exhausted. And after that, I had to start working to bring in money. And there were too many children doing things that they shouldn't do during the day. So I work at night. So the kids are in bed and I'm like working, and I need all of my brain power to do that. So very early on, and I don't even remember where I heard this, but someone had suggested that when you have a lot of kids and you're trying to get lunch to not be like a chaos, that you read to them during lunch. And I was like, I like that idea, because lunch was a little chaotic in my house. And so I started that, at 6. That's definitely my oldest was maybe not even that old. And then we started reading at lunch, and we still do that today, even though, my youngest is in 5th grade, but everybody else is middle school, high school, and we still every day read at lunch, and we love it. I typically vary. So I don't go to the middle. I actually am a former public school teacher too. And so I'm adverse to going to the middle because of that experience. So I sometimes will read on the higher level, and like Caleb said, sometimes the younger ones are like just sort of listening. And sometimes we'll read on the younger level, which actually my older kids love. They love to still listen to picture books and things like that. So I kind of vary it instead of just going into the middle. So a little bit different.
Yeah. And again, I know I keep saying this, but that is the beauty of homeschool, is we can do what is best and what works best for our families. We don't really do the read alouds at nighttime either, because my husband likes to use that time to just spend with the kids. And so we do lunchtime read alouds, and it helps in the lunchtime drama for me. It just keeps everybody stays focused to do the reading aloud. Kim, I am so glad that you brought this up, because I haven't gotten any questions here. But just in my own hometown, I have several moms who constantly ask me, they're single moms, and they say, can I do it? I can't do it because I'm a single mom. I can't do it because I have to work. And that is not truth. And you are a living, breathing, walking example of that. Can you share, and really more than share, can you just encourage those moms who feel like they can't do it because they know, I'm just thinking of one friend in particular. She knows it's the best thing for her kid. She knows it's the best thing for her family, but she just feels like she's been taken out of the race. So will you encourage and speak to those moms?
So I'll tell you why homeschool. I was also raised by a single mom. And so when my husband left, I have a teaching degree. I was going to go back to work and teach and just take my kids along. And then I started thinking, my kids' life will be exactly what my life was. And that is, you go to all your separate places, you come home and try to eat dinner, and maybe you spend a little time together through your exhaustion, and you go to bed. And that's basically how I was raised. My mom actually worked 3 jobs. And so I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm just not. And I'm just going to trust God to say what, to provide for me so that I didn't have to do that. I knew I would have to work. I do work. But I just prayed for a way that I could do that from home, and then was determined that it would just make things worse if we were all doing things separately. So I just said, okay, we're going to stay here, and we're just going to wait for God to provide in this thing. And it is not easy by any means, but it's not easy for any homeschooler. So, we all have to overcome various hurdles and things like that. And so I would definitely encourage you to step outside. You know, people will immediately say to you, particularly when you become a single mom, but I would also say there's some moms who do need to bring in extra income, and it kind of is the same thing. And people will immediately say, well, you need to put the kids in school. What other option do you have? And it's just in today's age, first of all, you can do VIP Kid at 5 a.m. and teach kids in China how to read. Like, lots of moms are making enough money to survive with something like that. You can start your own business. You can sell things on Etsy. I mean, there's so many options. You're not boxed in. And homeschooling has taken a situation that is not ideal, and a situation that really could have kept me from having the family life I really wanted, and enabled me to have that. Because sometimes I'm working and they're doing school, but sometimes they're sitting in here on my lap while I'm typing, even though they're too big for that. But right? But I have that opportunity to be right here with them, and I cherish every moment of that, and would never have done it a different way. So I hope that's encouraging.
That is incredibly encouraging to all of us, because
Absolutely. Bravo.
Yeah. Well done. And there are so many moms that need to hear that, because that needs to be heard. So thank you. So I want to know how do you juggle it? Because whether, like you said, whether you're a single mom or not a single mom, we juggle a lot of things. I always think I'm a housekeeper. I'm a cook, not a very good one, but I am a cook. I'm a teacher. I'm an encourager to hopefully other women. And how do you juggle all of that, Kim? I don't want to say do it all, because we aren't made to do it all, but how do you prioritize in a way that you can juggle all of those things and not neglect your children?
So I definitely don't do it all. I am very purposeful. There's a lot of things that I don't do that other people do. And I'm actually fine with that. I am very purposeful in that way. I choose the things that I know God has really gifted me in. I am a natural teacher, so I teach kids at church because it just bubbles out, right? But I'm not a natural person who the people who like cater foods and do that part of serving at church. So I stay out of that. I do the one thing that is real easy for me to do, and then I don't do the other things. I also, back to our comment that we made about don't do too much. I never do too much. School especially. When my kids were really little, we did what we needed to do. I knew what we needed to do. We only did what we needed to do. I'm like, these kids need to learn how to read. That's what we're going to work on. We don't have to do science and social studies and Latin when they're 4. You don't have to do that. And so that's my other secret, is I just do what I have to do. And I continue that all the way through. And then next would be independent learning and responsible kids is like my signature. My kids have to step up to the plate. By 5 years old, every one of my kids can unload the dishwasher and all of that. My oldest cooks dinner every single night. She loves it. Things like that. So getting them to do a lot of the things is very helpful, and getting them to do a lot of the even teaching. Last year, Andrew Pua would be so proud. Actually, it's this year still. My oldest taught. She's gone through all of the IEW. She's finished. So she taught her younger brothers IEW. And so I use things like that. And anything. I think way outside of the box. Anything you can do to not do all the things is really helpful. And the checklist. Back to the checklist. Because it helps us all. The checklist helps young children stay on task for things that they ordinarily wouldn't be able to do by themselves. And so it's kind of, a little secret tool there. So
that's wonderful. That's great. And I think that's good advice to everybody. We should be outsourcing a lot of what we're doing to our children. Isn't that the ultimate goal, is to raise children to be adults and not to be catering to their every whim, but to teach them. So that isn't just, unique to you're inspiring all of us, even though it's not unique to your circumstance. We should all be doing that. We should be teaching our children that way. Davis or Caleb, do you want to chime in on anything about having your kids step up to the plate in all circumstances?
Yeah, sometimes the way Rachel and I like to word that is we want to work ourselves out of a job. And so on the educating job in particular, so part of the transition to junior high and then to high school is, as Kim said, to help instill an independent learning spirit, where you help them with maybe their checklist of what they need to accomplish this week, what they need to read, what work they need to get done, how far they need to get on a project. But then it's up to them to manage their time and learn to manage their time, because that's a great life skill in its own right, but it has to be taught and learned and honed. And high school is a great time to do that, so that they, right now with a 16 and 18-year-old, a sophomore and a senior, homeschooling is actually fairly easy for Rachel and I right now, because the boys have seen it in their older siblings. We've had a pretty decent habit and routine and rhythm in our family. And so they know the routine. They know what they're supposed to do. And sure, they'll fall off the wagon every once in a while and we have to crack the whip. But all in all, they're real close to becoming that independent learner, and we just help keep them accountable.
Yeah,
I love what you said about working yourself out of a job. I love the classical model for education, and with the classical model, we really teach with the grain. So we're focusing with our littles on, they love repetition, they love memorizing. Their brains are sponges. They just remember everything. And so we really focus with our younger children on what are the essential pieces of information that they need in their head to have success in the future. And we really try to pare that down to, all right, what is absolutely essential that we want them to have in their mind. And then as they grow, we're focusing on how they're going to then use that information in their mind. I think oftentimes we can get caught up in education on focusing on teaching a subject rather than teaching our children. And when we're teaching our children, we're thinking about how they're utilizing what they're given to engage with the world, to think about the world. And when you begin to do that, you recognize how much of the curriculum is actually unnecessary. It's really not very needed. My parents used an unschooling approach. I know not everybody's for that, but it was unschooling and rigorous at the same time, if that makes sense. My parents' philosophy was you learn to read and you learn mathematics and you can do anything. And that's what they did. And really all the other subjects were really driven by our passions. So history and science, we would research, we would investigate what we were passionate about. And we could do anything. I have 2 master's degrees now, and most of my siblings have master's degrees as well. We were really successful once we got to the next level because our parents taught us to think. They didn't just tell us what to think. And when your children are little, you're giving them all that information. But then as they get older, you're doing less and less. You're pulling away more, and you're letting more of their passion drive their learning.
That is so good, Caleb. I love that. I always say if our kids can learn how to learn, then there's nothing they can't learn. And I want to point out, Kim, you said you were a former public school teacher. Caleb is, and I myself am. I think it's very interesting that we are all public school teachers who are not putting our kids in public school. And I think that we get stuck in the public school model that, you go to, I think a middle school, you go to language arts class, and then you go to science class, and then you go to history class, and you hit each of these little things, and you have to do each of these. But when we take what Caleb said about teaching your kids how to learn, there's nothing they can't learn. So obviously we need to teach them to read and math. But then we go back to what Davis said at the beginning, is then we help them find their God-given talents and their God-given gifts and their passions. And when those two things come together, it's a recipe for success. There is no doubt that there's going to be success in that situation.
One thing I'd like to add to this conversation is about my 17-year-old that turns 18 next month. So he's technically a senior. This year he will finish all the requirements that Rachel and I have for him to graduate. But we have conversations with our kids about, what's next. And because of his love for learning and the fact that in his mind, there's so much he'd like to study and read before he even thinks about college, we're going to do what we've defined. This is the only child we've done this with. And we're calling it a super senior year. And so next year, we've already put together his game plan with the books that he's put together. He's basically putting together his curriculum next year with the books that he wants to read. He does want to do a particular online course He's going to continue Latin, which is one of his giftings. He really loves languages and Latin in particular. And there's and soccer. He's really pursuing soccer and pretty gifted there too. So it's a full curriculum. And we threw in some service and work. We want him to actually get a job outside of the house. But he's more excited about next year than anything because it's his curriculum that he's put together. All we're going to do is hold him accountable and make sure that he's, not getting lazy and that he's actually pushing himself and being challenged. But Rachel and I are pretty excited for him.
That sounds really amazing. That sounds great. So, Kim, you had mentioned something, and there's comments popping up about this. You strike a chord when people say we don't have to do it all. When you said you don't have to do it all, really? We don't. So then you kind of discussed how we can have our kids cook, we can have our kids clean. I always share the story of my daughter who, when she was 10, she informed me that I should be cleaning the bathroom more than once a week. And I have never cleaned the bathroom since. That just immediately became her job. So we can give our kids those jobs. I also think they can share in the academics with one another, and that can take off. It was such a light bulb moment to me. I would sit down every day and feel like I'd get out the Apologia book, shameless plug for Apologia, Davis. It's the most amazing science curriculum. And I would get it out and I thought, I have to sit down and read this with the kids. And a mom said, "You read that? Why don't you sit while you're doing dishes and the kids read it to each other?" And I thought, this was brilliant. They can help each other. And I know, and you guys know, as parents and as teachers, when we teach something, we also learn it so much better. So as the olders were teaching the youngers this science, they were absorbing it. The youngers liked the change of pace to learn from the olders. So we really don't have to do it all. We just have to go to older, wiser, more experienced homeschool moms and say, how did you make this work? So it takes a lot of pressure off of homeschool moms when we know we don't have to do it all.
In my family, there's 9 of us, and the 4 oldest all went into education. And I think it was the most natural thing for us because we were all teaching our younger siblings. So 2 of us are still in education. The other 2 saw the light and they got out. But yeah, it's it actually creates skills that they can then use. I paid my way through college tutoring mathematics. Wow. I had all these classmates and I was like, why can't they do this stuff? Didn't they learn? They were going to school. They had teachers. And so it allowed me then to find a career with education. So yeah, for sure. Capitalize on those older children and don't think that you're taking away from them. You're adding to them. Right. As they explain what they've understood, it's cementing in their head. They're learning it more thoroughly. I tell my college students, I say, hey, go out and tutor algebra because you're taking calculus and you're making algebraic mistakes. If you're tutoring it, you're going to get it stuck in your head and you're not going to make those elementary errors anymore.
That's fabulous advice. That's great advice. Caleb, will you still remain teaching as you go into this ministry, or is this?
I'm just an adjunct professor, so I just teach like 1 or 2 classes here and there. So I'll probably continue to do that, and then I'll continue doing tutoring and that sort of thing.
Wow. I just want to share with everybody, Kim, Davis, and Caleb all have been guests on the Schoolhouse Rock podcast. And that's why I feel like I know you guys a little bit, even though I don't. So if you want more of what they're talking about, Caleb has a great show on just a lot of what he's talking about. And in each of them, make sure you go over to the Schoolhouse Rock podcast and you can hear those episodes with each one of them and get a little more information there. I want to do one more question. Well, we have time for several more questions, so people can keep writing in, but I want to hit this one, and I want to allow each of you guys to share this because you each have different angles for it. But someone wrote in, and actually many people have, what is your best advice to get through the I want to give up moments? Because I think every mom, and I think we need to know every mom has been there. Every dad, every homeschool parent has been there. You're not alone that you've hit that I want to give up. And if you haven't, I would like to meet you. But I think most everybody has gotten to that place where they just say, I don't think I can do this anymore. What would your, Davis, your seasoned advice be? And Kim and Caleb, you're still in the trenches with it. But let's start with you, Kim.
Okay. My best advice, what I use personally, is a written vision statement. So we have a purpose for what we're doing. And those days that are hard, and there are plenty, yes, I can look on the wall and see why I'm homeschooling, why I'm choosing to do the things that we're doing and where we're trying to go with this. And I think having that visual reminder is huge when it comes to just those days when you feel like I'm not getting anywhere, I'm going to give up. So that's number one. The second thing would be, this is what I think is really valuable for assessment when it comes to your kids, because when you can look at where they've gone and how much they've learned, it's very, very motivating. And it really helps you to say, you know what, I want to keep doing this. So I keep a portfolio of all of my kids' stuff for that reason alone. So I can look back and see, yes, we've learned a lot. And so they can look back and see, we've learned a lot. Look at how much you've grown this year. It's so valuable to have that documentation in some way. It doesn't have to be like a standardized test. It can be, a portfolio, but having some kind of documentation to remind you of how far you've come.
That is a great idea. I'm writing that one down. I'm taking that one. Davis?
Yeah, so I'll give the same. I have two pieces of advice. One of them is one I've given for the 24 years we've homeschooled, because the year that we were ready to give up was year number one. I mean, crazy, bad, rocky, it's a miracle that we went to the second year. And what happened at the end of that first year? We went to a homeschool conference. Mm-hmm. And so my first piece of advice would be to get to a live conference, an online conference like the one you're in right now. Listen to podcasts, read some blogs, be encouraged by people who aren't discouraged right now, that are there to affirm, encourage, challenge, and inspire you, and celebrate all the amazing things that can happen in the homeschooling journey. So get yourself in a homeschool workshop with people that are going to speak to you and answer the questions you have, or just give you that encouragement that you need to go another day or go another year. I love going to events like this, to listen, to hear, to speak. They're always so encouraging for me, even 24 years into this. The second piece of advice I'd give is similar to what Kim said, and that is to ask yourself, what is the most ideal scenario you could imagine and picture for your kids' educational experience? And there's lots of options: public, secular private, Christian private, homeschool, charter, magnet schools, all kinds of options out there. Look at all the good and bad of each and try and build from the ground up or on a piece of paper what would be the ideal, wonderful scenario. And I have a hard time thinking that anybody wouldn't say and come to the conclusion that homeschooling is actually the ideal. Even if they're not doing it right now, even if they have their kids in public or private or some of the other options, they would probably admit that homeschooling is the ideal, but then they might come up with the reasons or excuses why they can't do it. But they'd still say, I can see how homeschooling is clearly the ideal from an educational standpoint, a family bonding standpoint, training, discipleship standpoint, socialization. Okay, I'm convinced, but now I need to be convinced why I need to do it or how I can do it. But just ask yourself, what's the ideal? And then you're just going to have to talk yourself out of it, or find out or realize that, let's give this a shot.
That's great. That's great advice, Davis. Thank you. Caleb?
Yeah. So I just want to reiterate what Kim was saying. You really need to know why you're doing what you're doing. And don't buy into the lie that what's going on in those, mysterious red brick buildings in every single neighborhood is amazing. If you can actually get in and observe some local classes, you'll be reminded why you're doing it. You'll see, I can do better than that. And it's not because I'm an educator, so I don't want to insult my own kind, but we just can't do it like a homeschool parent can. We have too many students who have too many different needs, going too many different directions. And I mean, maybe I don't think anybody has 30 children in their home. There was 9 in ours, but we're all different levels and we're all helping each other out. It's that one room schoolhouse mentality. So know why you're doing it. But then secondly, understand this: you need to take care of yourself. The reason we burn out is because we're not taking care of ourselves. You can't give what you don't have. And so you're trying to educate your children. You're trying to develop a passion in them. You need to be feeding your own passions. You need to be feeding your own mind. That's one of the reasons. Yeah, Davis, go to a conference, go listen to somebody, listen to those podcasts, open up books, spend time reading books. If you don't have time to read books, then listen to them on Audible, listen to books, get your motivation from what you're taking in. You can't give what you don't have. Understand, any educator, they have an hour every day set aside in the middle of their day to prep. They have a prep period. Give yourself a prep period. Give yourself some time where kids, this is mom or dad, whoever's at home doing the homeschooling, this is their prep time, and no questions during this time. You're going to do a quiet activity while I have some prep time. It's okay for an educator to have me time. Any professional educator knows that's essential. Educators lose their brains in years where they sell their prep. They can make a little extra money if they give away their prep period, and they lose their minds. They need that time. You need that time. You need a break. You need a break before the school year starts, in the middle of the school year, at the end of the school year, to plan. Give yourself some time to plan. Give yourself some time to figure out what you're going to do. Go away to a homeschool conference and then spend time in the homeschool in the hotel room afterwards, just going over your curriculum for the year, figuring things out. Take some time out of the home to do that. Work that out with your spouse if you can, but you need some time for yourself. And that's why we burn out, because we don't take care of ourselves. You need to take care of yourself. It's not selfish, it's essential.
That is so encouraging to hear from a dad too, to kind of give permission to the moms to do that, right? So
and if there's dads on here, you need to make sure your wife has that time. You need to try to free her up so that she can get away. She can spend some time preparing, take the kids out of the house, let her go away to a conference, whatever is necessary, or go with her and get babysitters. That's what I like to do. But get your wife inspired. That's your job.
Yeah. And there's practical ways. I mean, Rachel was saying earlier in the week that, Davis, you would take the kids to Awanas, right? And so you would take them, and that would just give her that hour. And, Kim, you have a little bit of a different situation, but these state conferences, I mean, I cannot tell you enough how important these state conferences are, because this is where you're getting fed. This is where it's like our Christian walk. If we isolate ourselves from the church and we don't get fed, we start to shrivel up. And it is similar with the homeschool community. If we're not getting fed from, I think Titus 2, if the older that have been there are not feeding into the younger, we start to shrivel up. But these conferences, they have kids programs. So you can drop off your kids. They get to go hang out with other kids and see that they're a part of something bigger. We get to go hang out with other adults and see that we're not alone. So I just want to reiterate that what Davis said about state conventions. And the other thing I want to say is, don't isolate yourself. As homeschool moms, we tend to isolate ourselves. We're in the house all day, every day with our little kids. And we just are too tired to go do the me time, Caleb, like you said, or we feel like it's selfish. But isolating ourselves is very dangerous. We don't want to do that. And then we need a mentorship sort of program. Find another mom, grab onto another mom and say, hey, encourage me, help me. And like Kim said earlier, step back. It's okay. I always say when a mom says, I feel like I'm losing my mind, I want to quit. And I say, quit. Don't put your kids in school. Don't jump the ship. But it's okay to quit for a week and just say, hey guys, we're going to go to the pool every day, or we're going to go to the park every day. It's okay to, it's okay to take a whole month off if you're losing your mind, and just invest in your kids and get back to why you were doing it. And like Kim said, go look at the thing you wrote on your why on your wall as to why you're doing this in the first place. So I think that is probably the greatest encouragement that any of you guys, could possibly give, is just giving moms permission to step back and regroup a little bit.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, please.
I just want to piggyback on the conferences too. And you did mention it is a little harder when you're going by yourself, but I have never missed a conference since actually before my kids were born, because we didn't talk about this, but I started homeschooling with my nephew. And so before my kids were born, I was going to conferences and I've not ever missed one. Now I do like 10 a year, so, which is different, but it's so important, and it totally can be done to get there and do it. Or, sometimes it has to be online, but even the getting there, this is really good, but the getting there, it does present some fellowship and things that you wouldn't even expect that you'd be getting. So it's valuable. Anyway,
Yes. I think we could all agree on that, right? Conferences. Okay, as we're waiting for some other questions to come in, I would like to give each of you just a little opportunity to share. We did at the beginning, you introduced yourself, but Kim, I would like you to share a little about what is Not Consumed. What do you do? What's your vision? Davis, if people don't know what Apologia is, I'm not sure if they've been living under a rock, but you can share a little bit of what that is. And Caleb, because you guys are doing big things in the homeschool community. You are the encouragers. You are the ones that when parents want to quit and they go to the conferences, they're hearing you speak. They're hearing you cheer them on. They're hearing you say, we were in the trenches just like you, or we are in the trenches just like you. Don't quit. You can do this. That is the gift that God has given each of you. And he's really gifted each of you in doing that and helping parents stay the course. So I would like to, because you guys didn't speak today, and I would like our audience to be able to really get to know who you are, where they can find you, and so that we can continue to be encouraged by you. So Kim, share a little bit about big picture, what you're doing.
So as you mentioned, Not Consumed is where you can find me, www.notconsumed.com. And our goal there is to help families grow in faith. So primarily that's through Bible studies. We have family Bible studies where you can all sit together on the same topic and, go through those things and deal with some of those heart issues and all of that. We do have a few homeschooling things as well, primarily in the realm of responsibility and independence and things like that. Planning, because those are my jam. Something that needs to happen when you have a lot of balls in the air. So that's what I do. Aside from conferences, I do speak between 8 and 10 conferences a year. So that is my favorite thing to do. I love talking to homeschool moms. So I think this is a great time to just add to it. If you're able to get to a conference and you get there, reach out and talk to the speakers that are there, because it's what makes us come back. Like, I just love that. I love being able to help and just talk about those things and share with people anything, pray with people, whatever it takes. So that's another one of the favorite things that I do. So
wonderful. Thanks, Kim. You're an inspiration to a lot of people. Davis, you mentioned everybody saw Rachel this week, and you guys are a dynamic duo. I was able to see her in my home state and hear her this June, and you are married to an amazing woman, and you two are a power team, and you guys are just, the homeschool industry is just ever so thankful for. Apologia is very well known. It's an incredible, we use it in science, we use it in math's coming out, right? We use it, I would have to say it's one of the best Bible curriculums. It's just, you guys do a great thing. So share a little bit for those that don't know what the Carmans are doing.
Sure. So Apologia is the company, the ministry, the organization that we lead. The website's apologia.com. That's a Greek word which means to defend the faith. And so we defend the faith by producing not just science curriculum, but creation-based science curriculum. And we have over 100 number one awards for the last 12 plus years. So like you said, it's well recognized. We're very grateful and thankful to be able to serve a lot of homeschooling families. So we have the creation-based science. We got worldview and Bible curriculum with new products in the works. We got 5 brand new products being released this year, 2 of which are our brand new math curricula for grades 1 through 6. We got level 1 and 2 that were just introduced yesterday. So if you go to the Apologia Facebook page, you can watch a video with the author, Katie Bell Gomez. She lives in Pennsylvania. She's a young homeschool mom of 3 and got a great math resume. So science, Bible, and math are the main core subjects. We also have a constitutional literacy curriculum, which every election year, like this year, is a big product that people are looking for. So Mike Ferris is the author of that, and he's well known in the homeschool community as well. And then we also have planners. Planners are an important part, has been talked about, getting planning time for the mom. So we have the ultimate guide to homeschool moms planners with several different beautiful colors and covers that you can select from. And then we also have an online academy. Apologia Online Academy is where we use technology like this to do live and recorded classes, depending on what's best for the family and the student. So that's the Apologia side. Rachel and I have a podcast. It's called Let's Talk Homeschool. So go to your favorite podcast app and find Let's Talk Homeschool. We coming up on our 1-year anniversary. We do 2 shows a month, and loving it. Recorded some today, having a blast. Just getting to share so many of the things we'd love to be able to help homeschooling families with that we don't get to often in the short homeschooling conference season. And then, oh yes, the last thing I want to make sure I tell people in this opportunity. Apologia is going to Israel in 2021. And within the next month, you'll be seeing things on our Facebook page and email where we want to invite the homeschool community to go with us. We can only accept up to 50 people, but one of our employees is an author and an apologist. He's going to be one of the 2 tour guides, along with one of the top 2 tour guides who lives in Israel. But Apologia is going to Israel, and we want to invite people to come with us.
That is very exciting. Thanks, Davis. And Caleb, you are, I think every homeschool mom wants to look at you and go, that's an example of what my kid could be. You're the living, breathing example of a kid that was homeschooled. You're a success story. So you're not only on the end of homeschooling your kids, but you were homeschooled. So we all want to meet your mom because you've told some amazing stories.
My mom is an inspiration for me because she just has a high school diploma. She didn't go to college, and she instilled in us a love of learning. My dad was a public school teacher. He was a science teacher. He actually taught intelligent design in public schools in California for 36 years and never got in trouble. So
wow,
that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, that's a miracle.
The main area where I interface with the homeschool community is through classical conversations. So you've heard me mention that a couple of times. I'm a practicum speaker, and we've talked a little bit about homeschool conferences. And I just want to encourage anybody who's on here, if you have a local classical conversations community, they will have a summer practicum for you that's free for parents. So if money's an issue or travel's an issue, if you have a local classical conversations community, they will put on a free conference for you this summer. And they're very inspiring. They have all sorts of merchandise that they'll have there for you. So I would really encourage you to try to find a local community that you can be involved in. And that's huge for just staying inspired. You need fellow homeschoolers to gather around with. So I would really encourage you to find a local community if you're not involved in one. They do a phenomenal job. Their curriculum, their structure is excellent. I love it. So
wonderful. Well, Caleb, thank you. Thank you for your encouragement. And like I said, all of these speakers, go to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast, and you can hear more from them. And we're going to close out the day. I just want to I want to thank everybody for joining us today. This conference has been incredible. It's been amazing. The comments coming in are showing that it really is encouraging so many people. And if you missed any of these today, they are on the Facebook page. You can go over, you can see any of the sessions that you missed. You can get your friends to still sign up. They can see what they missed. They can see what's coming. So we want to thank today Karen DeBuse. If you missed her, she talked about real homeschooling and just getting real. Connie Albers, who talked about high school homeschooling and high school and remaining steadfast during that. Linda Hobart, who talked about Mary and Martha and how they homeschool differently. So if you missed that, go check that one out. And then the most hilarious Todd Wilson, who really spoke to the hearts of dads and makes everybody laugh. And he talked about lies that homeschoolers believe. So if you missed any of those, go check them out and get your friends signed up. There's still time, and come back tomorrow. We are so excited about what we have going on tomorrow. I'm going to share a little bit about that. But before I do, I want to tell you, there are contests going on all day throughout the whole week. Amazing contests. You can win incredible things. Davis, can we win a trip to Israel?
I'm giving scholarships to Apologia team members. But
okay. Sorry, we put him on the spot. But there are amazing prizes that are going on all week. So if you go over to the homegrowngenerations.com website, all the information is there that you need. Just look at the drop-down menu of the convention and it's there. So go get signed up for those. So tomorrow, here's what we've got. Tomorrow's day is family. So today we talked about encouragement. We just encouraged the homeschool community. Tomorrow we're talking all about family. We are kicking off the day with Kirk Cameron, who is going to share lessons that he learned within the walls of his home. So tune in for that one. And then we go to Ginger Hubbard, who's talking about reaching the heart of your child. Then Israel Wayne will kind of talk about all things family. And Dorinda Wilson will close us out that day with nurturing sibling relationships. Well, actually, she's not. She's going to close us out with the speakers. And then we'll close out the day tomorrow with another roundtable. So please be thinking of your questions all day long as you hear these speakers. And then come back for the roundtable. Several of those speakers will join us for more questions. So we need your questions. So we are so glad that you guys joined us today. Kim, Davis, Caleb, thank you so much for your encouragement, your inspiration, just helping us to stay the course, and all of your wisdom. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So everybody have a great evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.